Hi everyone. Oh my God, I feel like I've deserted everybody. Sorry, I've been crazy busy finishing my book, and I'm just in the editing stage now. It should be ready in the next week or so. So I'm finally completing that. So it's a big relief. And I know everybody's super excited about the eclipse coming up, and there's lots of people talking about it and the prophecies around it. And I do believe it's has prophecy meaning to it because of the location of how it's crossing the United States, which is pretty obvious. And then people are talking about all the towns of Nibia that it's passing and how were they all named like that. And there's lots of symbolism to the founding fathers and them understanding that this eclipse was going to be happening at this time. And how did they do that? There was a man named Rittenhouse that had built kind of like a clock with planets, and you can go seek him out and you see the device that he used. And so they could predict this stuff ahead of time just from mechanically understanding how the planets move and the speed that they're moving at. So here we have a typical picture that you'd get on news media. They're not letting you know which constellation they're in because that would basically disagree with tropical astrology, right? So you can basically see here, this is Orion. Okay, so Orion comes up here. And we got like the Pleiades are here. Okay, so this is Taurus here. This is the horns, the Silver Gate. If you have an app on your phone or iPad, you can go out and verify this, like just kind of go see where Jupiter is and Uranus, and you'll see that they're just on the shoulder of Taurus, but showing up in Aries. Okay, so this is all happening in Aries. And I'll show you another picture of that. That's where the eclipse is. This is in Pisces. This is the right fish of Pisces here. Okay, coming up like this. And then Saturn and Mars, it's not quite a conjunction, but very close, is in Aquarius. So here you can see it here. Okay, so we have Pisces, the right fish, Venus is here, Mercury on the left fish, and Uranus and Jupiter, and this comet that is actually known as the Devil's Comet. Now, this is what all the hype is about, that we have this Devil's Comet coming through. It's coming through in the Lamb, you could say the Lamb of God, or the war within yourself, because Aries rules self, this continual duality war that we have in our side ourselves. So that's where that Devil Comet's coming through. So it's going to be a lot about self. This eclipse is going to be a lot about self. And I really do believe that. And because of Jupiter being here in Aries and Uranus, this is all freedom. This is bringing positive energy to the self. And then you have this devil thing coming through you. It's like the battle of within. Okay, this is how I'm perceiving all this. Pisces rules the 12th house. It's all to do with the ends of kind of like your life. It's like you're exiting out. It's the soles of your feet. And it's your connection to your dark night of the soul, your psyche. Okay, that's what Pisces is all about. It's spiritual. So this is going to be a spiritual, eclipse being there. Okay, so it's gonna it personally, I believe that, this is like calling for you to decide what side of the track you're going to be on, with the past, like how society is going to be divided between nature and AI. Okay, that's how I'm kind of seeing this. It's like asking you to complete, okay, to complete the journey of the dark night of the soul. Okay, and here we have Saturn with Mars. This is Mars here in Aquarius on the water pouring out, and this is Leticia. This is a Latin word for asteroid that's almost conjunct with them there, and this means joy. Okay, so that's a positive sign. But Saturn with Mars there, this is kind of like taking your energy away from networking with other people. Okay, so it's like, or networking, you could say, in groups. So it's going to make you feel more in isolation, like that you prefer to be alone. Okay, so this is really I wouldn't say difficult placements, but this is really a lot about our own journey, how we're dealing with groups and friends, and then, going through your journey, to find your soul's path. This is really what's going on here. But anyhow, there's so much going on. I've got so much for you prepared here for you, and announcing my book a little bit, because it's about, this is the way I see it. Okay, this is how I've kind of always seen it, is that they're following prophecy of the Bible, and it has to do with the return of Jesus consciousness, or however you want to see that, upgrading society into and more enlightenment. But there's many people that won't go that path. Probably the majority, I would say, would not go that path, because it's everything else is about AI and downloading your consciousness into AI. Okay, so there's like these two paths. It's either your body is your temple, or you're going to go with the group AI. And so I believe that this is a journey that the Templars were trying to understand, and they, turned into the Masons, and they put landmarks everywhere, so that our consciousness would tweak in to go, wow, how could that possibly be right now, unless somebody knew about that before. So it's like they are putting like a golden thread of knowledge through monuments, landmarks, and they do align to the sky. Okay, so that's what my book is all about. My book is about ley lines and how they align to astrology, mainly in regards to the founding of the United States and the whole New World when it got discovered. And it ties into so much stuff, like the Olympics coming up this year, for instance, the importance of that and why they were using the Jupiter symbol for that. There's so much information in that book that ties the founding quest, that ties to the whole freedom of the patriot movement, and then how that is so that you have the ability to go visit Jerusalem free of will, right to the Holy of Holies. Okay, there's this whole journey that has to be happening, and the prophecy is that the third temple has to be built before Jesus returns, right? So this eclipse isn't going to end the world or anything. This is just asking you to start your journey, and then the Olympics is going to be very important too, because it's in France, and that's all tied to them helping, found the United States with the funding. And so much is tied into the politics and the sky, and then prophecy, and then mythology. It's just crazy. It's so much that it's hard to grasp your head around it all. But I've tried to map it out for you guys through the ley lines, through events, through Paris, because the athletes will be going down the Seine River, which that's never done before. Athletes have never been out in the open like that. There's a spiritual journey that's happening there. Okay, and this eclipse is tied to all of that. Okay, but it's not. I don't believe it's the end of the world. I've been following the blood moon cycles, and I found the a math moon code that repeats itself over a large chunk of time. And we're coming up to that again soon. And that's what my book is about, and talking about the lunar eclipses, and how they're so important, okay, to all what's going on. Okay, so we know that this happened back in June 1st in 2020, when Trump walked across Lafayette Square. That's super important. I have a whole section about Lafayette in my book, and why Lafayette is so important. And Trump walked across Lafayette Square, and he held this Bible up at St. John's Church. St. John's, the Templars worship St. John. Okay, this is not St. John the Baptist, this church, but the whole fact that it says St. John's here, it's, he's the one of the gospels of Jesus, but this is still, St. John's is super important to the Templars. That's who they worship. Okay, so this is really important. And now with the news, with him selling the Bibles, they were using this picture. So there's obviously an association to it. Now, this is my book cover. I actually did AI art for this because this is all really important. The Templar cross and the meaning of it, the the thorn of crowns, crown of thorns, sorry. That's all tied to the passions, artifacts, that they found in Jerusalem when the Templars went and brought them back to France. Okay. This is all tied into all of this. Okay. So the fact that the Olympics are in Paris this year is all tying into the Jesus story. Okay. And yeah, so that's what I did there. And I will have that book up. Just send me an email if you're interested. And I just plan on asking for donation. It's not a book per se, like a written book to buy. It's an ebook. It's just a document. It's just a document. I don't even want to call it a book really because it's just a ton of information. It took me like a year and a half to put together, and it's tying all to what's happening now and how it relates to the prophecy of the book of Revelations, okay? And how that all ties into the sky and understanding how to read the signs. That's basically what it is. And it ties to the moons, the lunar eclipse blood moons. So here we have it. So they use this picture about him, saying, let's make America pray again. It's all tied into Easter, the ascension of Jesus. It's the ascension story. That's what he's, telling us to pay attention to. Now, he came out with the selling of the Bibles on March 26th. It hit the news. And this is when he was walking across Lafayette Square. And it's exactly 45 months later and 25 days. The 45 months I find really important. And I just like this number. It's 1991. It's the 11 and the 999, which is really spiritual. And so we got 45 months, and Trump was the 45th president, but he also announced, I think it was in February, he announced these sneakers, and they were mentioning it in the news when he was selling the Bibles. And this is a company that got just registered, okay, that is selling these. I went into that, but I don't think it's here saying the name of the company, but it was just registered quickly. It's called the 45th or something like this. So, the number 45 is super important. So it's always like, in the code. So we had two Bible situations, and, so the 45 months, I'm sure, is not a coincidence. And they talk about him hawking, Trump hawks special, Bibles. I find this word interesting, the hawk. I haven't really found a link to it in all of this right now, but keep your eyes open for this one because I think it has a meaning why they're using it. They were mentioning on the radio the same thing, like the DJs are using the word. So yeah, it's obviously has some importance. So anyhow, so this church at Lafayette Square, St. John's Church, has to do with all the presidents, right? Obviously, because it's close to the White House, and it has a Templar cross in it. Okay, always look for this cross, right? Because this is about the four directions for sure. But it's also, so significant with the Crusades. Okay, so Lincoln was praying there during the Civil War, so that's super important because Lincoln keeps popping up all the time, and especially with the Lincoln car commercials. I find those really fascinating, and I will do a video on that because it is relevant to Jesus. I've found a connection there. And they're saying here that this is where it was all during the George Floyd thing. The Ashburton house is where it all happened, and there was a fire happening, but only in the nursery. So I found that weird, a fire in the nursery, but nowhere else. Okay, so just little funny little history things. So John the Evangelist is symbolically represented by an eagle, not a hawk, but an eagle. Okay, so that's important because he's one of the creatures envisioned by Ezekiel in the book of Revelations. You know, when they had the eagle, angel, and then what was the other one? It's the bull. It's the fixed cross, right? And Scorpio is represented as the eagle. Okay, so that's to do with Saint John. Okay, but there's also a cross about Saint John with the eagle in here. Okay, so sometimes there's a cross on the sun behind the eagle's head. Now, why is that important? Because the eagle is a figure of the sky. That's what it represents, and believed by Christian scholars to be able to look straight into the sun. Okay, so I'm not saying go look at the sun with the eclipse. Don't do that. But, you know, sun gazing at sunset and sunrise is very important to help the brain open up. So, you know, there's a relevance to that. But, you know, it's the bird, right? It's the bird, you know, the blue bird, who knows? You know, it's the symbolism of the bird. That's all tied to Thoth, okay, in Egyptian mythology. And the sun, like the eagle can look straight at the sun. So that's all symbolic to the Templar cross, understanding how that all ties in. So then, you know, there's so much going on with this collapse of this bridge. So I want to get into all that because that's really important. This is all happening on March 26th. So Trump starts selling his Bibles, and then the bridge, you know, falls down. Now, Francis Scott Key Bridge, you know, he was the man that created the Star Spangled Banner, right? Through a poem and from a different song, but then he transferred it over. So yes, and then we have a container ship that hit the bridge. His name is Dali, and this ship is named after Salvador Dali, the artist. They're saying here it's a Singapore flag container ship. I thought I saw Thailand at one point through the news, but I couldn't find that, pull it back. But anyhow, it's kind of interesting, all to do with Dali. I will go into that. Okay, so but first let's go about the song. Okay, the lyrics are all kind of pagan, really. They're talking about Venus, the myrtle of Venus, and Bacchus's wine. So this is all like Greek mythology. Okay, and that's what you know, often pagans would worship Bacchus, right? So, and Old Thunder is Jupiter. The yellow-haired god, again, is Jupiter. And the 9 feisty maids, those would be the 9 muses, right? So they're very important. They always talk about the 9 muses. And I just did the class for that, and I will have that posted up soon, the 9 muses and their importance. But this is part of the lyrics. I'm not going to read through them all, but the Anacreon, okay, he was a poet. He's one of the 9 lyric poets from Greek mythology. Very important poet. And you can read through the lyrics and see, you know, how, you know, switching the lyrics to what they are today was a big switch. Okay, this is the original song. Jove again is Jupiter. Now, this is why I'm pointing this out, is because of the Jupiter symbol being used for the Paris Olympics. When they originally announced the Olympics, that's what they were using. So I do think Jupiter being in Aries right now, and then going into the Pleiades, Taurus, where the soul path of the soul is measured by, is going to be all relevant. And I had put this in because Venus, the myrtle, because they were talking about the myrtle in that song, and she's known as Venus Myrcia. That actually means myrtle in Latin, and it's the importance of the plant to her. But myrtle is all to do with fertility, love, rebirth. It has to do with rebirth. Okay, so it all ties into that song. So yeah, it ties to the Kai energy and Chinese culture, and then symbolizes happiness and love, bride and groom. So I keep trying to see if I can find anywhere where Myrtle is tied to Venus. And I thought I had that link a long time ago, but I don't know if I'm just imagining that link. But the Myrtle, I always thought was held in her hand where she has the wheat now. And previously it was a myrtle, but I couldn't find it today. So this Francis Scott Key Monument at the Golden Gate in San Francisco was toppled down in June, the same time when Trump made that walk over to St. John's Church, all to do with George Floyd when they had all the riots going on. And so, you know, this man was a real patriot, right? Yeah, probably a Mason, okay? They had their own little private little singing club there, and they did poetry and stuff. Those are enlightened souls that understand how hidden knowledge are in poems, okay? And they ended up toppling down his statue here. So this is still standing. I think the top is still standing, but he's gone. And then the sculpture, Diana King, made a sculpture to 350 Africans kidnapped and forced into slave ship. And this is because they're blaming that because he owns slaves, he's a terrible, terrible person, which is like judging history from, hundreds of years later. It's like bizarre for me. Everybody was doing it then. I'm not saying it was right, and he did free many of them. So, I just find this is all part of the programming to just divide, people's consciousness about what's going on. But Dana King, when I looked into her, she actually worked for CBS, okay, for most of her career. So yeah, this is the sculpture that she made. So that's the new, he's gone, now we got this going on. Okay, so a bunch of representing Black people staring at him, and he's gone now. It's very cold and dark. It's all metal. But anyhow, I just found that all very interesting. Now, I always like to go back in history to see what's happened on the same day, because they want the same theme to happen. That seems to be the whole storyline, is that they want to show the same thing all the time so that you remember what happened on that day. How do you remember? I don't know. I'm assuming they're thinking from our past lives. I don't know, or just know your history really well. But March 26th, which is when the bridge got taken down, Trump's selling his Bibles, and this was what happened in 1945 during World War II. This is that famous painting of the U.S. Marine Corps, the Secure Island at, I'm not even going to try to pronounce this, Iwo Jima. And so it's just because this painting is so important. And I'm sure if I go into the history of this location and all this, I'm sure there's some symbolic reasoning why it was done there. That's a whole other video. But this painting is super important and has to do with the U.S. Marine Corps. So then, 2 years later, the Academy Awards is on this day, on March 26th. And they have the bridge of the River Kiwa. And this is like it's not a documentary, but it's like they use some of the storyline of what happened in World War II when the Japanese made, I guess, American soldiers and British soldiers, sorry, to actually build this bridge, and they didn't feed them. They were living in, they were starving, and it was just really bad. And they kind of say it was like a ritual suicide. The bridge was constructed, proceeds badly due to faulty Japanese engineering, and the prisoner's slow pace was a sabotage. Okay, this is the plot of the movie, but they're actually kind of doing a soft documentary about what happened during the war on the Burma Railway. Okay, so this is why it's called the Death Railway. So, you know, the whole thing, the movie was based off of a bridge going down. Um, and it's just funny that it all happened, like it happened on the same day. You know, the movie got the Academy Award. So there's always like some weird kind of link going on there. So here's the liberated prisoners um, after the war ended. You can see they're really skinny. I've seen worse pictures of them actually. And then they thought, you know, they said here, at midday, August 15, 1948, when thousands of prisoners and local slave laborers lined up and the jungle. Oh yeah, because this is why I wanted to put it in, because it's a bit tied to Jesus again, because they didn't know that the war was over, but they did a ceremony saying that the railway had been completed, and they hammered a rusty nail into place, like they hammered the iron, you know, and iron going over ley lines breaks the energy. It's really not good to have metal when you're working it with ley lines. It's going to hamper with it. So, you know, it's like putting that nail in the coffin or the nail in the cross, you know. So yeah, so here's the ship that smashed into the bridge, the Dali. I just wanted to, yeah, it was on March 26th when it happened. Salvador Dali, he's a famous artist, right? And that's what the ship's name came from. Now, he had done a painting called The Broken Bridge and Dreams, okay? So that's like just bizarre in itself, right? But up here, if you look, that's Jesus on the white horse, okay? So they're bringing the Jesus theme into it, okay? Um, yeah, and so when you look into Dali and his life, you have to always look at what, you know, their interests were. So he liked to have references to Einstein's theory of relativity, of time and space. He's saying here, images of atomic particles appeared in his work as soon after the atomic bombing at Hiroshima, and strands of DNA appeared in the mid 1950s. So he's doing lots of symbolism, but his whole work, like, oh yeah, he was identified as a communist, um, you know, a soft, well, I don't know how, by what I've read, it's like, um, it was more like he kind of got pulled into something that he said or didn't say, and then they just accused him of being a communist. But he was very religious, okay? And he was interested in this Jesuit priest and philosopher, Teilhard de Chardin, okay? And his omega point theory. Now we know Jesus is the alpha and the omega, okay? So I was kind of like, okay, there's something here. In the book of Revelations, Christ describes himself as the Alpha and Omega. So that's, but this French Catholic priest, Dali worshipped him, okay, and studied him a lot. Okay, so we have to go because this always ties back into the whole religion thing, okay, and the religion and the conversion of the natives on the New World, okay, of North America when they moved over here because the natives understood the ley lines. Okay, so there's this whole thing about converting the natives and how they use the ley lines with trauma to kind of like map out reality. It's like they create these events and then that energy goes into the ley lines and it causes like a fractal or something in the timeline, basically, of how they want the time or the script to go. Okay, it's kind of weird, but you can see, and I showed that in my book, like how certain ley lines have really negative events and then other ley lines have really positive events. So there's like a history, not only running through dates, it's also because that's what's happening in the sky every year is the same thing, where the sun is. It's not just running through dates, it's running through places on the map. Okay, so it's really fascinating how they're kind of molding our script by events and then kind of creating a solution for those events. So yeah, so and then they're saying here when our talks, oh yeah, he was talking, this guy was saying, according to Hillebrand in a conversation after a lecture of Teilhard, Teilhard ignored completely the decisive difference between nature and supernature. So there's this, it's kind of like an argument going on here. After a lively discussion in which I ventured at criticism of his ideas, I had an opportunity to speak to Teilhard privately. When our talk touched on St. Augustine, okay, so you have to go into the history of St. Augustine, he exclaimed violently, "Don't mention that unfortunate man. He spoiled everything by introducing the supernatural." Okay, so Teilhard has always been considered like by the church kind of like a taboo topic. You can't reference his work, okay? And he got into some kind of deep theories of how mankind, which direction mankind was going to go in. And he believed that God or Jesus was in everything. He believed he was in the plants. He believed that eventually humanity would go down to, totally connected unit. It would be like a hive mind. Okay. So there's kind of like, I haven't studied it a lot, but I just understand that there's kind of like, they believe the internet is what he was seeing, okay, in the future. Okay, so as mankind organizes itself in a more complex social networks, the higher the noosphere will grow in awareness. This concept extends Teilhard's law of complexity and consciousness, the law describing the nature of evolution in the universe. And then the unification, so the greater integration and unification culminating to the omega point, an apex of thought consciousness, which he saw as a goal of history. So yeah, so I'm starting to think here a little bit that the theory is that some believe consciousness should be put into AI, and then other people, I guess, believe that it has to be naturally done through your spirituality, right? So there's kind of like these two theories going on. And they're trying to say his theory has to do with these social networks, tying everything together. So I think they did an article in Wired magazine referencing him too, saying that, yeah, he was, foreseeing the internet. He wrote this one book called The Phenomenal of Man. And let's see here. Yeah, it's just kind of like consciousness, how it's going to keep expanding. And he's talking about energy and radial energy, spiritual energy that accumulates into higher states as time progresses. So he believed that we were going to transform. But what is weird is, I'm just going to go through this quickly because it's kind of long here, that he believed that we would be able to withstand a high heat, like from radiation, and that we would be able to withstand it. Which is kind of like, whoa, like that is that kind of what's coming, the transformation, almost like scientifically that the body transforms. So yeah, so he wasn't really, his writings none of them were placed in the forbidden books, but like I said, it was a taboo for them to talk about him. And yeah, I think we saw that slide already. Yeah, so he says that the idea of a heat death stems from the second law of thermodynamics, of which one version states the entropy tends to increase in an isolated system. And from this, the hypothesis implies that it is the universe's lasts for a significant time. It will be asymptomatically approached a state of it all energy is evenly distributed. In other words, according to his hypothesis, there was a tendency in nature towards the dissipation, energy transformation of mechanical energy, motion into thermal energy. So he kind of believes that we're going to transform. So, and then it's tying to Jupiter. This is what's really weird. Okay, so Voltaire, in a French astronomer, Bailey, in 1777, so that's all when the founding of the United States was happening, in his writings of history of astronomy and in the ensuing correspondence with Voltaire, who's a famous astrologer, in Bailey's view, all planets have an internal heat and are now at some particular stage of cooling. Jupiter, for instance, is still too hot for life to arise there for thousands of years, while the moon is already too cold. So they're saying eventually there'll be an equilibrium through the temperatures of the planets and everything will kind of become neutral. So the heat death of the universe, also known as the big chill or the big freeze. Well, that's all in entertainment industry. They talk about these terms, big chill and big freeze, right? Wasn't there a movie called The Big Chill? So the heat death of the universe. It's a hypothesis of the ultimate fate of the universe, which suggests the universe will evolve into a state of no thermodynamic free energy and will therefore be unable to sustain processes that increase entropy. Yeah, so the entropy is meaning like it kind of keeps dying. So it won't be able to do that. Heat death does not imply any particular absolute temperature. It only requires that the temperature differences or other processes may no longer be exploited to perform work. And so we won't be slaves anymore, right? In the language of physics, this is when the universe reaches the thermodynamic equilibrium. So equilibrium, sorry. So yeah, I was just kind of like, whoa, this is kind of crazy. So heat death paradox, like it's like, which disproves the infinity old universe. So yeah, so it's like, yeah, it's interesting. They talk about dark energy. So yeah, the omega point. The omega point does not exist within the timeline of the universe. It occurs at the exact edge of the end of time. And from that point, all sequences of existence are sucked into its being. So the omega point can be understood as a volume shaped like a cone in which each section taken from the base of its summit decreases until it diminishes in the final point. So it's almost like going through that cone. It's like, I wonder if it's through Orion, right? That's what Dan Winter says. He's like, it's like an hourglass and it's kind of like two cones kissing or two pine cones kissing, he says. So it's like they're saying, yeah. So if Jesus is the Alpha and Omega, so is this what they're talking about? Like time changes, like, you know? So yeah, the Wired magazine here, Teller saw the net coming more than half a century before it arrived. Okay, so he saw it coming, but is that where we're going? Like, I don't believe so. I think many will go that way, but I don't believe that's the esoteric meaning of spirituality and becoming enlightened is by putting yourself into AI. Um, unless it's unless we're already in some advanced AI, and that our bodies are AI, already like some weird, it's just bizarre, right? It's just so, anyhow. So Pope Francis refers to Teilhard in one of his speeches just recently, okay? Which I find, so he's pushing his theory now. And so I found this about, he's saying that Pope Francis, at the conclusion of the Mass, okay, calling him often misunderstood, the Pope concluded with a quote from Teilhard, "The Mass on the World." This is you can go pull that up on, just Google it and you can get this and you can read the whole works. It's not that long, it's just a few pages, okay? And it's all in English, a version of which was written in 1923 near the northern border of Mongolia, where Teilhard was participating in a scientific expedition. So this is the quote that the Pope used. radiant word, blazing power, you who mold the manifold so as to breathe life into it. I pray you lay on us those your hands, powerful, considerate, and omnipresent. So the mention of Talar caused a bit of a stir among the reporters at the Vatican watchers. And this was just very recently this happened. Okay, so it was like not long ago. But he also, I went and pulled that, his work up, and he mentions paganism. Like a pagan, I worship a God who can be touched, and I do indeed touch him, this God over the whole surface and in the depths of the world of matter, which confines me, but to take hold of him as I would wish, simply in order to not to stop touching him. So he's basically saying, like, God is everywhere. I must go always on and on, through and beyond each undertaking, unable to rest in anything, borne onward at each moment by creatures, and at each moment going beyond them, in a continuing welcoming of them and continuing detachment from them. Like the quietest, I allow myself with the delight to be cradled into the divine fantasy. But at the same time, I know that the divine will only be revealed to me at each moment if I exert myself to the utmost. I shall only touch God in the world of matter when, like Jacob, I have been vanquished by him. So it's like, whoa, it's pretty intense. Okay. So they're talking about him. Yeah, this was September 5th that he ended up quoting him. So it wasn't very long ago. And this, yeah, so this was where his quote stopped, or that's what the article said. Maybe he finished the whole thing, but it was after the omnipresence, those hands which do not, like our human hands, touch now here, now there. Now, what's crazy is, okay, that now here, now there phrase was totally linked to Little John Kennedy. Okay, so he did an interview and he said that term, now here, now there. So it's like, what? You know, yeah. So I don't know, but which plunge into the depths of totality, present and past. Okay, so they're talking about time not existing, of things so as to reach us simultaneously to all that is most immense and most inward within us and around us. So this quote that Pope Francis just quoted, maybe didn't finish the whole thing, is about going inward. Okay. And then around us, it's like, okay, well, maybe that's the AI that's around us, right? We're totally surrounded by it now. But what's inward is most immense and most inward within us and around us. So it's like, I don't know. I think they're basically mentioning here the present and the past of the totality of those two. Okay, so it's getting pretty amazing, that we're, talking about that stuff now in quotes through the Pope. I'm just like, whoa, it's nuts. So yeah, I just think you have to stay focused on your inner work right now with the approach of this eclipse coming and this comet coming. And don't let the devil in, don't let the negative thoughts or the heaviness of the totality of what's going on. It's more about when you see the bigger picture, and that's why I wrote that ebook document for you guys. It's actually 340 pages with lots of pictures, so it's not a hard read. It's a lot of history kind of connecting to ley lines, and then the whole blood moon repetitive cycle and what's happened in the past with those, and seeing a pattern in how every time that happens, the repetitive pattern happens, there's religious things happening on this planet. So there's something really important with religion and spirituality tied to the lunar eclipses. The solar eclipses, I see them more as like balancing the dark and light energy, because the moon is black. It's a new moon. It looks like a snake eye, and you have to balance those two energies. But with the lunar eclipse, okay, Earth is in the center of, in between the sun and the moon. So Earth is the heart. The lunar eclipse can represent fertility, you know, or home, or that whole motherly aspect, because the moon rules house of home and memory. So there's this whole inner journey, but when it's in blood, it's not like, oh, blood negative. It's like the blood of Christ. Okay. So it's kind of, I see it more spiritual than a solar eclipse. The solar eclipse, it's kind of more balancing light and dark. And then with the lunar eclipse, it's more about um, connecting to the past and understanding the importance of your blood and your family, and you know what you're carrying, basically. So there's different aspects between the lunar and the solar, but there's a lot of fear from both eclipses, you know, lunar or solar, because they used to manipulate the natives with it, right? They'd say, oh, look, you know, we're the smart wise men, when we want to come and, you know, invade you. This, you need to listen to us. So we're gonna just go back on our ship for a little bit and wait it out. And when we're waiting it out, the moon's gonna go blood red, or while we're waiting it out, you know, it's gonna get dark out, you know. And they would use it to manipulate native people. So there's some type of trickery, you know, around it. So I think there's a lot of hype to get you worked up, and whatever you believe will show up for you. So it's very important that you just, you know, go inward and meditate and kind of try to ground, you know, during this eclipse, because your feet need to be grounded, because Pisces rules your feet. So you should ground the energy. Really, really important. More so than looking up, you know, focus on sinking down, you know, staying grounded, working through the ground and finding the energy, or go hug a tree or something. You know, just ground, you know, it's just or lie on the ground, you know. But the important thing is to just work on yourself and try to find that middle ground of peace. So yeah, I'm sorry I left you guys hanging so long here about the eclipse, but I was just so busy trying to get the book ready so you guys can kind of connect all the dots and then understand the events that are going to come forward. You're going to know that it's all about the history of the patriot movement, freedom, and the ability to create a path to Jerusalem for any religion to want to go there. Because right now, it's part of it is you can't get to the Holy of Holies, only if you're a certain religion. So it ends up causing problems, right? So with the belief that that land is holy for everyone. But I think really the whole thing is you have to just do your inner work and not worry about so much of what's happening, but it's just more like a movie playing out, so that you can know that this is a spiritual movie. And that's what the best part about it all is. Yes, people pass away. It's horrific, but we've all passed away many times before, I believe. Okay. So if you don't believe in reincarnation, then that's, you know, the polarity of hell and heaven. That's still polarity. So to get out of the polarity realm, you have to believe that there's something more, right? Besides being stuck in duality. So anyhow, just give me an email if you're interested. Yeah, I'm just gonna probably put like just $10 on it, or a donation. But yeah, be able to send you the link as soon as the book finishes getting its final editing, and you guys can go, you know, see when these lunar eclipses will be happening, and how much time you have to prepare. Okay, so that's all I'm going to leave you with. So take care and enjoy the eclipse. Stay grounded. Bye.